The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from dozens of species gathered around the massive holographic display. Admiral Zex-Thu of the Korthani Empire tapped his 4 clawed fingers against the metal table, creating a rhythmic clicking that echoed through the silent room. The news was not good. "The Devourers have taken 3 more systems," announced Council Speaker Veltara, her translucent blue skin flickering with patterns of distress. "The Kepler colonies, the mining stations of Proxima 7, and worst of all, the fortress world of Granite Prime." A collective shudder ran through the assembled beings. Granite Prime had been considered unbreakable. Its massive orbital defense platforms and ground-based particle cannons should have held off any invasion force. Yet the Devourers had swept through its defenses like they were made of paper. "How many survivors?" asked General Mordek of the Ursine Confederation. His bear-like features creased with concern. "None," Veltara replied simply. "As always, they left nothing behind. No bodies, no structures, no trace that civilization ever existed there. The Devourers were unlike any enemy the galaxy had faced before. They consumed everything, organic and inorganic alike, leaving behind only empty space and lifeless rocks. They moved through space in massive bioships that seemed to grow larger with each world they consumed, and their ground forces were nightmares of teeth and claws and acidic blood. "We need something new," Admiral Zex-Thu said, his voice carrying the weight of desperation. "Our conventional forces can barely slow them down. The hegemony's battle cruisers, the Korthani war fleets, even the Crystalline Empire's energy weapons, they shrug off everything we throw at them." "What about the humans?" The question came from Ambassador Tyrion of the Felidae Republic, her cat-like ears twitching with curiosity. "They are the newest members of the Council. Perhaps they have some untested technology or tactics." Several representatives turned to look at the human delegation, which consisted of exactly 3 people sitting quietly at a small table near the back of the chamber. The contrast with the other species' grand delegations was stark. Where other races had arrived with dozens of advisors, military attachés, and technical experts, Earth had sent only Ambassador Sarah Chen, Military Liaison Colonel James Rodriguez, and their quiet translator, Dr. Elena Vasquez. Admiral Zex-Thu's mandibles clicked in what his species considered polite skepticism. "No offense to our human colleagues, but their homeworld only achieved faster-than-light travel 6 months ago. Their technology level is centuries behind the rest of us. Their largest warship has roughly the same firepower as one of our patrol boats." Ambassador Chen stood up slowly, her movements deliberate and calm. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 5 feet tall, with graying hair and a gentle face that reminded many of the assembled aliens of their own grandmothers. When she spoke, her voice was soft and measured. "Admiral Zex-Thu is correct about our technological limitations," she said, nodding respectfully toward the Korthani commander. "Earth's contributions to the Council have been primarily cultural and scientific. We are aware that militarily, we are considered the weakest member species." "No shame in that," rumbled General Mordek kindly. "The Ursine Confederation was once in a similar position. It takes time to build effective space-based defenses." Dr. Vasquez, who had been silent throughout the entire meeting, looked up from her tablet where she had been quietly taking notes. She was even smaller than Ambassador Chen, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and large glasses that gave her an owl-like appearance. She wore a plain gray uniform that seemed 2 sizes too big for her slight frame. "Dr. Vasquez," Ambassador Chen said gently, "would you like to address the Council regarding Project Nightingale?" The translator shook her head quickly, her cheeks flushing red. "Oh, no, Ambassador. I'm just here to observe and record." "I wouldn't want to speak out of turn." Her voice was barely above a whisper, and several of the alien representatives had to adjust their universal translators to pick up her words. Speaker Veltara's patterns shifted to what humans had learned indicated polite curiosity. Project Nightingale? We are not familiar with this designation. Colonel Rodriguez cleared his throat. It's classified, but given the current crisis... He glanced at Ambassador Chen, who nodded. Project Nightingale is Earth's contribution to the war effort. Dr. Vasquez here is our lead researcher on the project. Dr. Vasquez looked mortified at being the center of attention. She clutched her tablet closer to her chest and seemed to shrink even smaller in her chair. It's really not that important, she stammered. Just some theoretical work on combat optimization algorithms. Admiral Zexthu's expression was skeptical. The idea that this timid little human female could contribute anything meaningful to military strategy seemed absurd. Her species was known for being peaceful to the point of pacifism, and she herself appeared to be afraid of her own shadow. Perhaps, the Admiral said diplomatically, it would be better to focus on more proven approaches. The Korthani Empire has been developing new plasma torpedo designs that might penetrate Devourer bioarmor. Of course, Dr. Vasquez said quickly, looking relieved to be dismissed. I'm sure your solutions are much better than anything Earth could offer. The meeting moved on to discussions of fleet deployments and defensive strategies. Dr. Vasquez continued to take notes quietly, occasionally whispering brief translations to Ambassador Chen, but otherwise remaining invisible in the background. What none of the alien representatives knew was that Dr. Elena Vasquez was not actually a translator at all. Dr. Elena Maria Vasquez, age 28, held dual doctorates in applied mathematics and cognitive psychology from MIT, a master's degree in military history from West Point, and had graduated summa cum laude from every institution she had ever attended. She spoke 7 Earth languages fluently and had mastered 4 alien dialects in the 6 months since first contact. Her IQ had been measured at over 200, placing her in the top 0.0001% of human intelligence. More importantly, she was a third-generation military family member whose grandfather had survived the siege of Stalingrad and whose father had earned 3 Purple Hearts in Afghanistan. Her older brother was a Navy SEAL, her younger sister flew F-35s, and her cousin held the record for the longest confirmed sniper kill in human history. But Elena had always been different from the rest of her family. Where they were loud and boisterous, she was quiet and observant. Where they charged headfirst into conflict, she analyzed and planned. Where they sought glory and recognition, she preferred to work in shadows and silence. When the Devourers first appeared on the galactic scene 8 months ago, every major military force had thrown their best generals and strategists at the problem. They had built bigger guns, heavier armor, faster ships. They had tried massive fleet engagements, guerrilla warfare, hit-and-run tactics, and desperate last stands. The Devourers had adapted to everything. Elena had taken a different approach. While the galaxy's greatest military minds focused on how to fight the Devourers, she had focused on how the Devourers fought. She had analyzed every scrap of battle data, every tactical report, every survivor testimony. She had mapped their movement patterns, studied their resource allocation, and built psychological profiles of their command structure. And she had found something that no one else had noticed. The Devourers were not just consuming worlds randomly. There was a pattern, a purpose, a weakness that could be exploited. But the opportunity would only come once, and it would require perfect timing, precise coordination, and a level of sacrifice that no traditional military commander would ever authorize. That was why Project Nightingale existed, not as a weapon or a technology, but as a strategy so ruthless and comprehensive that Elena had been afraid to share it with anyone until the situation became truly desperate. As the council meeting dragged on through hour after hour of increasingly futile discussions, Elena continued to take her notes and make her calculations. Ambassador Chen occasionally asked her to clarify a technical term or provide background information, maintaining the fiction that Elena was simply a support staff member. Finally, after 6 hours of debate, Speaker Veltara called for a recess. The various delegations began to file out of the chamber, most of them looking dejected and hopeless. The Devourers were winning, and everyone knew it. "Doctor," Ambassador Chen said quietly as they gathered their materials, "how much time do we have?" Elena glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then checked her calculations one more time. Based on their current rate of expansion and resource consumption patterns, they'll reach the core worlds in approximately 43 days. After that, she shrugged. Game over. "And Nightingale?" "Ready for implementation whenever you give the word." "But Ambassador..." Elena's voice dropped even lower. "Once we start this, there's no going back. The galactic community will never look at humanity the same way again." Ambassador Chen was quiet for a long moment, staring out through the massive windows at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were consuming another world, adding its biomass and technology to their ever-growing swarm. "Elena," she said finally, "what do you think our new alien friends would say if they knew what you were really planning?" Elena adjusted her glasses and gave a small, shy smile that somehow managed to look both innocent and terrifying at the same time. "I think they'd run." 3 days later, the Devourers attacked the Helix Nebula, a region of space containing 17 inhabited systems and over 40 billion sentient beings. The combined fleets of the Galactic Council met them in what military historians would later call the largest space battle in recorded history. The combined fleets were annihilated in less than 4 hours. When the news reached the council chambers, the silence was deafening. Representatives from species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia sat in stunned disbelief. Their most advanced weapons, their most experienced commanders, their most powerful warships had been swept aside like dust. Speaker Veltara's normally blue skin had turned a pale gray, a sure sign of shock in her species. "The casualty reports," she began, then stopped, unable to continue. Admiral Zexthu stood up slowly, his usual military bearing replaced by something that looked dangerously close to despair. "The Korthani 7th Fleet is gone, completely gone. Admiral Tormax, 300,000 crew members, 67 capital ships. Nothing left but debris." Similar reports came in from every species present. The Ursine Confederation had lost their entire First Armada. The Crystalline Empire's legendary Prism Dreadnoughts had been dissolved by Devourer acid spitters. The Felidai Republic's fastest interceptors had been caught and consumed by creatures that moved faster than anything alive had a right to move. "How many systems do they control now?" General Mordek asked, his voice hollow. 112, came the reply from the Council's military computers. "At their current rate of expansion, they will reach the core worlds in 37 days. Ambassador Chen stood up again, her movements as calm and deliberate as always. "Honorable Speaker, respected representatives," she said, "Earth formally requests permission to implement emergency military protocol Nightingale." The chamber erupted in confused chatter. None of the alien representatives had any idea what she was talking about. Admiral Zexthu's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Ambassador Chen, with all due respect, this is not the time for experimental human technologies. We need proven solutions, not theoretical research projects." "Admiral," Chen replied politely, "I understand your concern, but our conventional forces have proven inadequate. Perhaps it is time to try something unconventional." "What exactly is Project Nightingale?" demanded Speaker Veltara. Chen looked back at Dr. Vasquez, who was once again sitting quietly with her tablet, looking for all the world like she wanted to disappear entirely. "Doctor, would you care to explain?" Elena looked up, her eyes wide with apparent nervousness. "Oh, I really don't think— I mean, it's quite technical, and I'm sure everyone is very busy." "Doctor," Chen said firmly, "the council needs to understand what we're proposing." Elena stood up slowly, clutching her tablet like a shield. She looked around the chamber at all the powerful alien representatives staring at her, and for a moment, it seemed like she might faint from anxiety. "Well," she said softly, "Project Nightingale is based on the observation that the Devourers have consistent behavioral patterns that suggest a hierarchical command structure with centralized decision-making processes and predictable resource allocation algorithms." The chamber fell silent as the universal translators processed this statement. "I'm sorry," Admiral Zexthu said. "Could you repeat that in simpler terms?" Elena blushed and looked down at her feet. "They have a weakness. I think I know how to exploit it, but—" She glanced around nervously. "It would require doing some things that might seem extreme." "How extreme?" asked General Mordek. Elena was quiet for a long moment, running calculations in her head. When she looked up again, her expression was still shy and uncertain, but there was something else there now, something that made several of the alien representatives unconsciously lean back in their chairs. "Extreme enough that you might prefer the Devourers." The chamber erupted in outraged protests and demands for explanation, but Elena just sat back down and resumed taking notes, leaving Ambassador Chen to handle the political fallout. What none of them knew was that Elena had already sent a coded message to Earth 3 days ago, immediately after the first reports of the Helix Nebula attack had arrived. The message contained just 4 words: "Nightingale is authorized. Begin." By the time the council meeting ended that day, 37 human ships had already departed Earth orbit, each one carrying a small crew of volunteers and a cargo hold full of equipment that officially did not exist. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the timid translator who was afraid of speaking in public, had just declared war on the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever known. And she was going to win. 12 days after the council meeting, the Devourers reached the Tau Ceti system, home to the ancient Valdorian Empire and 12 billion souls. The Valdorians had ruled this corner of the galaxy for over 5,000 years, and their crystal cities were considered among the most beautiful in known space. The Devourers consumed them in 18 hours. Admiral Zexthu stood in the Council's military command center, watching the tactical displays with growing horror. Red markers representing Devourer bioships were spreading across the galactic map like a plague. Each red dot represented billions of lives lost, entire civilizations erased from existence. "Where are the human ships?" demanded General Mordek. His ursine features were twisted with rage and desperation. "They promised they would implement their Nightingale protocol. We've heard nothing from them for nearly 2 weeks." Ambassador Chen stood calmly beside the main display, her hands folded behind her back. "The human vessels are in position, General. Dr. Vasquez is monitoring the situation and will initiate the protocol when the optimal moment arrives." Speaker Veltara's skin patterns flickered with frustrated confusion. "Ambassador Chen, forgive my directness, but your people sent 37 small ships against an enemy that destroyed our combined fleets. Those vessels barely qualify as corvettes by our standards. Each one carries a crew of less than 50 individuals. How exactly do you expect them to accomplish what hundreds of thousands of our finest warriors could not?" "Speaker Veltara," Chen replied quietly, "you asked us to try something unconventional." At that moment, Dr. Elena Vasquez walked into the command center, still carrying her ever-present tablet and wearing the same oversized gray uniform that made her look like a child playing dress-up in adult clothes. She moved through the room quietly, nodding politely to the various military officers and political figures who barely acknowledged her presence. "Doctor," Admiral Zexthu said without looking away from the displays. "I hope you have good news. The Devourers just entered the Centauri approach. At their current speed, they'll reach the core worlds in 26 days. Elena stopped beside the main tactical display and studied it for a moment, her large eyes moving rapidly as she processed the information. "Actually, Admiral, they'll reach the core worlds in 23 days, 4 hours and 16 minutes. They've increased their consumption rate by approximately 12% since yesterday." Several of the alien officers turned to look at her with surprise. Her calculation was precise down to the minute, delivered without consulting any computer or reference material. "You calculated that in your head?" asked Commander Silith of the avian hegemony. Elena blushed and looked down at her feet. "I'm sorry, I probably made an error. I'm not very good with mathematics under pressure." What she didn't mention was that she had been tracking every single Devourer ship, bioconstruct, and support creature across 17 different star systems simultaneously, maintaining a complete real-time model of their entire invasion force in her head, while also running tactical projections and resource calculations for the 43 separate components of Project Nightingale. "Doctor," Ambassador Chen said gently, "perhaps now would be an appropriate time to begin?" Elena nodded and pulled a small communication device from her pocket. It was a simple human military radio, the kind used by infantry soldiers, and it looked absurdly primitive compared to the advanced holographic communication systems used by the other species. "Control, this is Nightingale Prime," she said softly into the radio. "Initiate Phase 1 on my mark." She paused, studying the tactical display one more time. Somewhere out there, 37 small human ships were moving into position around key Devourer forces. Each ship carried a hand-picked crew of volunteers and equipment that had been classified at the highest levels of human government. Mark. For a moment, nothing happened. The red markers continued their inexorable advance across the galactic map. The assembled alien commanders watched in confused silence. Then Admiral Zexthu's tactical computer chimed softly. "Sir," reported his aide, "we're receiving new communication signals from the Devourer forces. They appear to be slowing down." "Slowing down?" General Mordek leaned forward, studying his own displays. "Confirmed. The lead elements have reduced speed by approximately 8% across all fronts." Speaker Veltara's pattern shifted to cautious optimism. "Are they responding to some kind of human weapon? Some form of interference technology?" Elena shook her head. "No, Speaker. They're responding to opportunity. I've given them something more attractive than their current targets." Before anyone could ask what she meant, the main display suddenly shifted as dozens of new signals appeared. Human ships, previously undetected, were now broadcasting on all frequencies. But these weren't the 37 vessels that had officially departed Earth. "How many ships is that?" demanded Admiral Zexthu. His aide's voice was stunned. "Sir, I count over 300 vessels. They're emerging from hyperspace across 15 different systems." Ambassador Chen smiled slightly. "Earth has been very busy these past few months, Admiral." "But that's impossible," protested Commander Sileth. "Our intelligence reports indicated that Earth's entire space fleet consisted of less than 50 ships." "Our official space fleet, yes," Chen agreed. "Dr. Vasquez, would you care to explain?" Elena looked around the room nervously, then cleared her throat. "Well," she said quietly, "we may have understated our industrial capacity when we first joined the Council, and we've been working very hard to catch up technologically. Also," she paused, looking embarrassed, "we might have been building warships in secret for the past 4 months." The command center erupted in shocked protests and demands for explanation. But Elena wasn't paying attention anymore. She was watching her displays, monitoring the responses of Devourer forces to the new developments. "Control, this is Nightingale Prime," she said into her radio, her voice still soft, but now carrying an undertone of absolute authority. "Execute Theta 7 through Theta 12. Begin active engagement protocols." On the tactical display, the newly revealed human ships began moving toward Devourer forces. But instead of forming traditional battle lines or attempting coordinated fleet actions, they spread out in seemingly random patterns. "What are they doing?" asked General Mordek. "Those ships are moving individually with no apparent coordination. They'll be picked off one by one." Elena looked up from her tablet, where she had been entering commands at a speed that made her fingers blur across the screen. "General, could you please switch the main display to real-time combat feeds from human vessels Concordia and New Beijing?" The display shifted to show two different camera feeds from human ships. The first showed the bridge of what appeared to be a converted cargo vessel, with a crew of maybe 20 humans in mismatched uniforms working frantically at improvised control stations. The second showed the exterior view from another ship as it approached a massive Devourer bioship that looked like a combination of a spider and a shark, all teeth and acid and writhing tentacles. "Those human ships are far too small," Admiral Zexthu observed. "They're not even 100th the mass of that bioship. Their weapons can't possibly penetrate Devourer armor." "You're absolutely right, Admiral," Elena said quietly. Then she spoke into her radio again. "Concordia, you are go for close approach. New Beijing, initiate boarding protocols." The aliens in the command center watched in stunned silence as the small human ship accelerated directly toward the massive Devourer vessel. No one expected what happened next. Instead of firing its weapons at long range, the human ship flew straight into the bioship's defensive perimeter. Devourer acid spitters and tentacle grabbers reached out to destroy it, but the human vessel twisted and spun through the attacks with impossible agility. It was flying like a fighter, not a capital ship. "How are they avoiding those attacks?" demanded Commander Sileth. "No ship that size should be able to maneuver like that." Elena glanced up from her tablet. "Human pilots train differently than most species. Also, our artificial gravity systems work a bit differently than yours. Our crews can handle much higher acceleration forces." What she didn't mention was that every human ship in the fleet was being piloted by volunteers from Earth's most elite military units. Fighter pilots, test pilots, astronauts who had been training in secret for months specifically for this mission. People who could function under acceleration forces that would kill most alien species. On screen, the human ship reached the bioship's hull, and something extraordinary happened. Instead of firing weapons, it extended mechanical claws and literally grabbed onto the enemy vessel. Then dozens of small figures in armored suits began pouring out of airlocks. "Are those soldiers?" asked Speaker Veltara in disbelief. "Boarding parties," Elena confirmed. She spoke into her radio again. "All units, you are cleared for close engagement. Remember, we need prisoners and data, not just kills." The second feed switched to helmet cameras from the human soldiers who were now cutting their way through the Devourer bioship's hull with some kind of molecular disruption weapons. What followed was unlike anything the alien observers had ever witnessed. The humans moved through the enemy ship like ghosts, flowing around obstacles and attacks with fluid precision. When they encountered Devourer warriors, creatures the size of rhinoceros with claws that could cut through battle armor, the humans didn't retreat or try to match them in straight combat. Instead, they used tactics that no civilized species would ever consider. One soldier used explosive charges to collapse a corridor, crushing 3 Devourers under tons of debris. Another released some kind of gas that caused the bioship's own immune system to attack its crew. A third team found the ship's power center and began systematically destroying it from the inside, trapping hundreds of Devourers in the dark. This is... Admiral Zexthu struggled to find words. This is not how space combat works. You don't board enemy vessels during fleet actions. It's too dangerous, too unpredictable. Admiral, Elena said quietly, humans have been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We've gotten very good at it. The feed switched to show a human soldier, a woman who couldn't have weighed more than 60 kilograms, single-handedly fighting a devourer warrior that was 3 times her size. She was using some kind of powered armor that amplified her movements, turning her into a whirlwind of precise violence. When the devourer tried to grab her with its massive claws, she slipped between them and drove a vibroblade into its central nervous cluster. When another creature tried to dissolve her with acid, she used its own melted carapace as a shield while she planted explosives in its brain cavity. "By the void," whispered General Mordek. "How is she still alive?" Elena looked up from her tablet, where she was now coordinating dozens of similar operations across multiple star systems. "Oh, that's Sergeant Maria Santos. She holds the record for most confirmed kills in human special operations. Lovely woman, very good with children." The camera feed continued to show Sergeant Santos as she carved her way through the bioship's crew with methodical efficiency. But what was most disturbing to the alien observers was not her skill or her violence. It was how calm she looked while doing it. "Control, this is Santos," her voice came through the radio, completely steady despite the fact that she was currently hanging upside down from the ceiling while fighting 3 devourers at once. "Bioship primary brain cavity located, ready for data extraction." "Copy that, Santos," Elena replied. "Extract everything and get out. Secondary teams will handle cleanup." On the display, more human ships were beginning similar boarding operations across the Devourer fleet. Each attack was perfectly coordinated, striking at precisely the moment when the bioships were most vulnerable. The humans seemed to know exactly where to hit and how to exploit every weakness. "How did you know their internal layout?" demanded Admiral Zexthu. "No one has ever successfully boarded a Devourer vessel before." Elena looked embarrassed. "Well, we may have captured a few smaller ships over the past few months, and we've been studying their biology quite extensively. Also," she hesitated, "we might have had some prisoners." "Prisoners?" Speaker Veltara's skin patterns went white with shock. "You captured live devourers?" "Only a few dozen," Elena said quickly. "We needed to understand their psychology and command structure. It was all very humane, I assure you." What she didn't mention was that the interrogation of devourer prisoners had been conducted by human specialists who had learned techniques from studying every conflict in Earth's bloody history. The information they had extracted had been comprehensive, detailed, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. The combat feeds continued to show human soldiers working their way through bioship after bioship. They moved with a precision and brutality that made it clear this was not their first time fighting devourers. They had been planning this operation for months, studying their enemy, learning their weaknesses, preparing for this exact moment. "Nightingale Prime, this is Team 7, came another voice over the radio. "We've secured the navigation center. The bioship's attempting to self-destruct." "Negative, 7, Elena replied calmly. "Override their destruction sequence and maintain course. We need them to reach the rally point intact." "Copy that, Prime. Beginning neural interface override." Admiral Zexthu looked at Elena with growing alarm. "Dr. Vasquez, are you saying that your soldiers are taking control of devourer ships?" Elena nodded absently while typing commands into her tablet. "It's really quite simple once you understand their bio-neural architecture. Devourers use a distributed command system that's actually quite vulnerable to the right kind of interference. On screen, they could see human soldiers attaching strange devices to what looked like massive nerve clusters throughout the captured bioships. Within minutes, The ships that had been attacking human forces were now turning to attack other Devourer vessels. "This is insane," breathed Commander Sileth. "You're turning their own fleet against them." "Only about 12% of it," Elena said modestly. "The rest will adapt to our intrusion techniques within a few hours, but 12% should be enough for Phase 2. She spoke into her radio again. "All teams, begin withdrawal to rally points. Prepare for deep strike operations." The tactical display showed human forces beginning to retreat from the captured bioships, but they weren't heading back to safety. Instead, they were moving toward the very center of the Devourer fleet, where the largest and most dangerous bioships were massed. "Dr. Vasquez," General Mordeck said slowly, "what exactly is Phase 2? Elena looked up at him with her usual shy smile, but now there was something else in her eyes, something that made the massive Ursine warrior take an involuntary step backward. "Phase 2 is when we find out if my theory about their command structure is correct," she said softly. "If I'm right, we can end this war today. And if you're wrong—" Elena's smile widened slightly, and for just a moment every alien in the command center could see exactly what Sergeant Santos and the other human soldiers saw when they looked at their quiet, unassuming mission commander. "If I'm wrong, then we die very quickly and the galaxy ends anyway. But honestly—" She looked back at her tablet where new tactical data was streaming in from dozens of human teams deep inside enemy territory. "I'm usually right about these things." The communication system crackled again. "Nightingale Prime, this is Deep Strike 1. We've located the target, beginning final approach." Elena's fingers flew across her tablet as she coordinated the most complex military operation in human history. Around her, alien commanders watched in amazement as a species they had considered barely above primitive hunter-gatherers systematically dismantled the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever known. "Phase 2 is authorized," Elena said quietly into her radio. "Good hunting." On the display, a single human ship began its final approach towards something that no alien had ever seen before. Something that existed at the very heart of the Devourer fleet. The war was about to end, one way or another. The alien commanders in the Council's command center watched in stunned silence as the tactical display showed a single human ship diving deep into the heart of the Devourer fleet. The vessel, designated Deep Strike 1, was no larger than a courier ship, yet it was heading directly toward a massive bioconstruct that dwarfed everything around it. "What is that thing?" whispered Speaker Veltara, her translucent skin flickering with patterns of fear. The bioconstruct on screen was unlike anything any of them had seen before. It was easily the size of a small moon, covered in writhing tentacles and pulsing with an eerie bioluminescent glow. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her tablet, her expression more serious than any of the aliens had ever seen it. "That's what we call a Queen Mother. The central command organism for the entire Devourer fleet. Every bioship, every warrior, every strategy, they've used it all originates from that creature." Admiral Zexthu's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. "Dr. Vasquez, that ship is flying directly into a trap. No vessel could survive close approach to such a massive enemy command center." "You're absolutely right, Admiral," Elena said quietly. "Which is why Deep Strike 1 isn't planning to survive." Before anyone could respond to this chilling statement, the communication system crackled to life. "Nightingale Prime, this is Captain Morrison aboard Deep Strike 1. We've breached the outer defensive perimeter. Beginning final approach to target." Elena lifted her radio with steady hands. "Copy that, Morrison. All systems green." "Affirmative, Prime. The package is armed and ready. Team is in position." "Understood. You are authorized for delivery. It has been an honor serving with you." There was a brief pause. When Captain Morrison's voice came back, it carried the calm acceptance of someone who had already made peace with their fate. "The honor has been ours, Prime. Tell Earth we got the job done. Deep Strike 1 out." The communication cut to static. General Mordek stared at the display in horror. Dr. Vasquez, are you saying that you sent those humans on a suicide mission? Elena looked at him with sad but determined eyes. General, every human on every ship in this operation volunteered knowing they probably wouldn't come home. Earth has 40 billion people. If a few thousand of us have to die to save 40 trillion galactic citizens, that's a trade we're willing to make. On screen, Deep Strike 1 had reached the Queen Mother's hull. The massive bioconstruct was launching every defensive measure it possessed, sending streams of acid, clouds of parasitic organisms, and massive tentacles to destroy the tiny human vessel. But Captain Morrison and his crew had trained for this exact scenario for months. The ship twisted through the attacks with impossible agility, its hull scarred by acid and impacts but still intact. As they watched, human figures in powered armor began ejecting from the ship, using personal jetpacks to reach the Queen Mother's surface, even as their vessel was finally torn apart by defensive fire. "They're boarding that thing," breathed Commander Sileth. "They're actually trying to board a creature the size of a moon." Elena nodded, her fingers flying over her tablet as she tracked the progress of Captain Morrison's team. The Queen Mother's neural center is located approximately 3 kilometers below its primary surface, protected by layers of bio-armor and defensive organisms. But we've identified a vulnerability. She spoke into her radio again. "All units, begin Phase 3. Target all Queen Mother support vessels and maintain pressure on secondary command nodes." Across the galaxy, the remaining human ships began coordinated attacks on smaller bioships that were clustered around the massive Queen Mother. But these weren't random attacks. They were surgical strikes aimed at specific vessels that Elena's analysis had identified as critical communication relays. "How did you know which ships to target?" demanded Admiral Zexthu. "The Devourers use a hierarchical command structure," Elena explained, while continuing to coordinate the operation. "The Queen Mother issues general strategic directives, but tactical implementation is handled by specialized subcommanders. Eliminate the right subcommanders at the right time, and the entire fleet becomes confused and disorganized." As if to prove her point, the tactical display began showing Devourer forces across multiple star systems, slowing their advance and beginning to mill about in apparent confusion. Without clear orders from their command hierarchy, the bioships were reverting to basic defensive behaviors. "Morrison, this is Nightingale Prime," Elena said into her radio. "Status report." There was a long pause filled with static and what sounded like weapons fire. Finally, Captain Morrison's voice came through, strained but determined. "Prime, we've reached the neural center. Holy hell, this thing is huge. We've got massive resistance, but we're making progress. Chen and Rodriguez are down, but the package is intact." Elena's expression tightened. She had known these people personally, had selected them for the mission herself, but she couldn't afford to show emotion now. "Copy that, Morrison. Time to target?" "Estimate 15 minutes. Prime." Morrison's voice hesitated. "You need to know that what we're seeing down here, it's not just a command center. This thing is intelligent, really intelligent. It's been studying us, learning our tactics. And there are others." "Others?" "Queen Mothers, Prime. We count at least 6 more bio-constructs this size in the surrounding fleet. This isn't just one creature commanding the Devourers, it's a council of them." The alien commanders exchanged horrified glances. If there were multiple command organisms of this size, the Devourer forces were far more organized and dangerous than anyone had realized. But Elena just smiled grimly. "That's actually perfect, Morrison. Continue with the mission." "Prime, did you hear what I said? There are at least 6 more of these things." "I heard you, Captain. And I counted 7, which is exactly what I was hoping for." Before anyone could ask what she meant, Elena turned to address the alien commanders. "Speaker Veltara, I need you to open communication channels to all Council member worlds immediately. Admiral Zexthu, please prepare your forces for emergency deployment to the coordinates I'm about to provide. Dr. Vasquez, Speaker Veltara said slowly. What exactly have you been planning? Elena set down her tablet and looked around the room at the assembled alien leaders. When she spoke, her voice carried an authority that none of them had heard before. For the past 8 months, I've been studying the Devourers, not just their tactics and technology, but their psychology and social structure. The Queen Mothers aren't just command organisms. They're a species, an ancient, highly intelligent species that has been consuming galaxies for millions of years. She gestured to the tactical display, which now showed the full scope of the Devourer fleet. But like any species, they have survival instincts, and they follow predictable patterns. When threatened, they don't just fight, they adapt, they learn. They evolve. General Mordek was beginning to understand. You've been teaching them. Exactly, Elena confirmed. Every attack we've made, every tactic we've used, it's all been designed to force them to adapt in specific ways, to concentrate their forces in predictable patterns, to reveal their true command structure. The radio crackled again. Prime, this is Morrison. We've reached the core. Beginning package deployment. Morrison, wait, Elena said quickly. I need you to listen carefully. You're not just placing an explosive device, you're placing a transmitter, a very special transmitter. There was confusion in Morrison's voice. Prime, this is definitely an explosive. A big one. It's both, Captain. Trust me. Deploy the package exactly as planned, but before you activate it, I need you to establish a direct neural link with the Queen Mother's consciousness. The entire command center erupted in shocked protests. Are you insane? Shouted Admiral Zexthu. You want human soldiers to make mental contact with a Devourer command organism. They could be driven mad or worse, turned against us. Elena held up her hand for silence. Admiral, I know exactly what I'm doing. Morrison, are you still with me? Yes, Prime. But I have to say, this is getting pretty weird even by human special operations standards. I know, Captain, but I need you to trust me one more time. Establish the neural link, download everything in the creature's memory banks, then activate the transmitter. The explosion will happen automatically 30 seconds after activation. Copy that, Prime. Beginning neural interface now. What happened next changed the course of galactic history forever. As Captain Morrison made mental contact with the Queen Mother's consciousness, the transmitter began broadcasting everything it found directly to Elena's tablet. But this wasn't just tactical information or strategic plans. It was the entire collective memory of the Devourer species, going back millions of years. Elena's eyes widened as terabytes of data flooded her consciousness through her neural interface implant. She saw the rise and fall of countless civilizations, the consumption of entire galaxies, the endless hunger that drove the Devourers across the universe. But more importantly, she saw their greatest weakness. The Devourers were not just consumers of biomass and technology. They were collectors of knowledge, of culture, of everything that made each species unique. And they kept it all stored in the collective consciousness of their Queen Mothers. Morrison, Elena said urgently, how many Queen Mothers did you say were in the fleet? 7, Prime, all clustered together about 50,000 kilometers from our position. Elena smiled for the first time in hours. Perfect. Captain, I need you to modify the transmitter settings. Instead of a simple explosive signal, I want you to broadcast a very specific frequency pattern. She began typing rapidly on her tablet, uploading complex mathematical formulas and harmonic algorithms. I'm sending you the frequency now. When you activate this, it won't just destroy the Queen Mother you're inside. It will create a resonance cascade that spreads to every Queen Mother in the fleet. What kind of resonance cascade? Morrison asked suspiciously. Elena's smile turned predatory. The kind that turns their greatest strength into their greatest vulnerability. The Queen Mothers share a collective consciousness, Captain. They're all connected, which means a properly designed virus transmitted through their neural network will spread to every Devourer command organism simultaneously. The alien commanders stared at her in shock. "You're going to infect their entire species with a computer virus?" General Mordek asked in disbelief. "Not a computer virus," Elena corrected. "A psychological virus, something that will fundamentally alter their basic drive to consume and destroy. Instead of seeing other species as food, they'll see them as—" She paused, searching for the right word. "As family." Speaker Veltara's patterns shifted to astonishment. "You're going to reprogram their entire species to be peaceful?" "More than that," Elena said. "I'm going to make them protectors instead of destroyers. Every world they've consumed, every species they've eliminated, all of that knowledge is still stored in their collective consciousness. With the right modifications, they'll feel compelled to recreate what they've destroyed instead of consuming what remains." The radio crackled urgently. "Prime, I hate to interrupt, but we've got about 3 minutes before this thing's immune system dissolves us. Are we doing this or not?" Elena lifted the radio with steady hands. "Morrison, activate the transmitter. And, Captain?" "Yes, Prime?" "Thank you, all of you. Earth will remember." The transmission went silent. On the tactical display, a small flash appeared at the center of the Queen Mother, followed by a much larger explosion that consumed the entire bioconstruct. But the real fireworks were just beginning. Across the Devourer fleet, Queen Mothers began broadcasting the modified signal to every bioship under their command. Within minutes, the psychological virus Elena had designed was spreading through the collective consciousness of the entire species. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Devourer bioships that had been advancing on inhabited worlds suddenly stopped. Their aggressive behaviors ceased. Their consumption of biomass halted, and then, impossibly, they began to retreat. "They're withdrawing," Admiral Zexthu said in amazement. "Across all fronts, the Devourer forces are pulling back." Elena nodded, watching her tablet as data flowed in from human observation posts across the galaxy. "The virus is working. It's rewriting their fundamental psychological drives. Instead of consuming, they're now compelled to preserve and protect." Over the following hours, reports came in from across the galaxy of Devourer forces, not only retreating, but actively helping with rescue operations on worlds they had previously attacked. Bioships were using their advanced technology to repair damaged planets and restore ecosystems. 3 days later, the first formal communication arrived from the reformed Devourer Collective. "To the species of the Galactic Council," the message began, transmitted in perfect galactic standard language. "We apologize for the harm we have caused. We wish to make amends. We possess the stored knowledge and genetic patterns of over 40,000 extinct species from across multiple galaxies. We would like to begin the process of restoration immediately." The council chambers were silent as the message concluded. Finally, Speaker Veltara turned to look at Elena, who was once again sitting quietly with her tablet, looking like the shy, nervous translator she had pretended to be. "Dr. Vasquez," the speaker said slowly, "did you just save the galaxy?" Elena looked up with her usual modest smile. "Oh, I couldn't have done it alone. It was really a team effort." Admiral Zexthu stared at her in amazement. "Doctor, in the space of 3 weeks, you've turned the most dangerous enemy the galaxy has ever known into our greatest ally. You've saved trillions of lives and ensured the survival of hundreds of species. How is that possible?" Elena adjusted her glasses and looked embarrassed. "Well, Admiral, humans have always been good at solving impossible problems. It's sort of our specialty." She gathered her tablet and stood up to leave, moving with the same quiet, unassuming manner she had displayed since first arriving at the council. "Dr. Vasquez," General Mordek called after her. "One more question. When you first came to the council, you seemed so timid, so afraid to speak up. Was that all an act?" Elena paused at the door and turned back with a small smile. "General, I wasn't acting timid because I was afraid of you. I was acting timid because I was afraid of what I might have to do if you couldn't stop the devourers." She looked around the room one more time, at all the powerful alien commanders who had underestimated her so completely. "Humans don't like war, General. We're very good at it, but we don't like it. So when we're forced to fight, we fight to win. Permanently." With that, she walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a room full of alien leaders who were suddenly very, very grateful that Earth had chosen to be their ally instead of their enemy. Outside in the corridor, Elena's radio crackled softly. "Nightingale Prime, this is Earth Command. Status report?" Elena smiled and lifted the radio to her lips. "Earth Command, this is Nightingale Prime. Mission accomplished. The galaxy is safe." "Copy that, Prime. Orders for Phase 4? Elena looked out through the massive windows at the stars beyond, where former Devourer bioships were already beginning the long process of restoration and healing. "Phase 4 is complete integration, Earth Command. It's time to show the galaxy what humans can really do when we're not trying to hide it anymore." As she walked toward her quarters, Elena reflected on how much had changed in just a few weeks. When humanity first joined the Galactic Council, they had been seen as primitive, weak, and largely irrelevant. Now they were the species that had saved everyone. And the really amusing part was that Elena hadn't even needed to use any of humanity's truly dangerous capabilities. Project Nightingale had been carried out using nothing more than intelligence, tactics, and a willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. If the aliens thought this was impressive, Elena mused, they were going to be absolutely amazed when they found out what humans could accomplish when they really tried. But that was a story for another day. For now, it was enough that the galaxy was safe. The Devourers had been transformed from destroyers into protectors, and humanity had taken its rightful place as one of the Council's most valued members. Elena Vasquez, the timid translator who was afraid of speaking in public, had just rewritten the rules of galactic civilization, and she was already planning her next project.